everyone. Hello, can you hear me? Yes. All right, it's very nice to be here. The exhibit at the California African American Museum is now going to be extended through August, which when we were putting all this stuff together, it was closing in March, but it's now going to be up until the end of August. And after you see this presentation today, that might inspire you to, on your next trip to Los Angeles, go and see the exhibit, because I have a lot more images of some of the things that I'm talking about here today. So as a publicly engaged historian and heritage conservation consultant, my interests are to use history in broader education programs inclusive of sites that are living links with past, present, and future generations that are physically and spiritually reminders of significant times, people, and places in American history and culture. Intentionally, my work is a social action practice to expand knowledge for the construction of a more inclusive public culture, historical memory, and national identity encompassing the diverse experiences of the American people to help dismantle institutional racism. Today, my brief remarks will explore stories of places from my recent book, as we identified, Living the California Dream, African American Leisure Sites During the Jim Crow Era, and some of my public projects. I will discuss also the impact of some of these 20th century stories and how today, in some instances, they are being used for society's betterment. African Americans began moving in large numbers to the Los Angeles environs around the turn of the 20th century, joining a multi-ethnic community that included whites and people of color, as well as immigrants from many global backgrounds. The majority of new black migrants relocated from American southern states. These African Americans of all socioeconomic classes, the new Negro, migrated to the United States northern, midwestern, and far western parts in the post-World War I decades to escape the worst of Jim Crow era racist, anti-black restrictions and racial injustice. They were more self-confident and sometimes militant in demanding their rights as citizens and as modern consumers. Similar to other groups who moved to the state, African Americans also embraced the recurring booster promoted California dream of a leisure lifestyle in picturesque outdoor settings, a mild climate, and new life opportunities, even while discrimination and lax enforcement of California civil rights laws established as early as 1893 many times prevented them from using various public and private facilities and buying land in many areas for decades into the 20th century. African Americans made California and American history by challenging racial and class structures when they occupied recreation sites and claimed public space at the core of the state's formative 20th century identity. These places of joy were also sites of resistance in the development of attractive inland and beach sites, relatively free from white citizens' harassment. Hence, in Los Angeles, recreation and relaxation were an essential component of liberty and a distinctive civil concern in the nation's long freedom rights struggle. I offer a view of the overlooked, extraordinary community builders and socioeconomic development experiences of Black California, and the impact of leisure that intersects with new scholarship about the influence of the diverse output of the Harlem Renaissance and the new Negro experience as a cultural movement of national and global phenomena. These reconstructed stories of unrecognized voices add new information and understanding about how African Americans sought to seize their California and American dreams to appropriate and shape the offerings of their new environment in the far West. Hence, these stories give a more complex understanding of the American experience and identity in the West and California, with where racial discrimination existed in practice rather than legal prescriptions, as in many other states of the nation in the post-enslavement modern capitalist era. This history is layered with stories about groups and individual circumstances and chronicles about migration patterns, socioeconomic status, cultural practices, and education and employment opportunities, as well as social power that took place in private and public spaces. They are a reflection of the structural racial exclusion and class exploitation imposed on African Americans and other minoritized groups. In contrast to the city where Black Angelenos lived, California waterfront and inland rustic places that flourished for different time durations between the 1900s to the 1960s were where they went to find joy, relaxation, and invest in real estate, including in Los Angeles County's Bruce's Beach, in Manhattan Beach, which some of you may have heard about in the news in the last couple of years, Santa Monica's Bay Street Beach, sometimes controversially called the Inkwell, Eureka Villa in northern LA County in the Santa Clarita Valley area, and in Riverside County, Lake Elsinore and Corona's Park Ridge Country Club. And there's a few other places that I talk about as well in the book. In building and enjoyment of these modern leisure communities through creative assertion, they claimed and performed full humanity, civic membership, as well as social and economic development, resourcefulness, and self-determination. The attention that these leisure places and spaces gained in the era's newspapers and social networks aided in creating public memory that offered African Americans new and broader visions of themselves, a new identity, and new collective sense of freedom and humanity, contributing to cultural and intellectual efforts that defined the new Negro. In California, African Americans' ambitions and initiatives for leisure space also radically claimed, challenged, and promoted the region's identity in the consumption of leisure as a modern lifestyle that would spread across the U.S. to develop a new suburban middle-class culture. In ex-urban communities, African Americans bought property so they could control their enjoyment of these activities and contest anti-Black racism. These and other California leisure spaces marked an African American identity on the regional landscape and social space as they confronted the emergent power politics around leisure space. The stage was set for these sites as places of remembrance of invention and public contest. One of the earliest places African Americans went for recreation and relaxation was Lake Elsinore in Riverside County, a somewhat a somewhat successful residential and leisure destination for the general population and African Americans through the middle decades of the 20th century. This was one of the furthest inland of the African American leisure spaces that existed. The Mission Inn, Palm Springs, Lake Elsinore were among numerous resorts in Riverside County that were popular from the 1880s to 1960s. People from around the Southern California region, especially from Los Angeles, the largest population center, and the county and the world visited the resorts to soak in and drink the cold and hot mineral waters for health and healing purposes, for relaxation, for the landscape vistas, and for the warm climate. By the late 1920s, Riverside was proclaimed as the empire of recreation and of health. In the Lake Elsinore Valley, several local black residents saw entrepreneurial opportunities to provide accommodations for African Americans who sought a rustic health respite from the metropolitan area, from the metropolitan areas, especially of Los Angeles, but also San Diego and the local Riverside community. Several prominent black Angelenos purchased their own vacation homes, and a few invested in resort and recreation spaces for their own and their sepia brethren's use at Lake Elsinore. At the same time, the white community celebrities and notables were gathering at Lake Elsinore, such as Carol Lombard, Clark Gable, Andy Devine, Bela Lugosi, Will Rogers, Harold Lloyd, Sir Guy Standing, Eddie Floyd, James Jeffries, and United States President Grover Cleveland. The Catalina Island Wrigleys also, with their baseball teams at the Los Angeles Angels and the Chicago Cubs, came for the winter. Amy Semple McPherson, one of the most popular evangelists of the period, conducted services at Lake Elsinore, and she built a palatial home she called Amy's Castle, that's in the Cleveland Heights area, which is still standing today, and it overlooks the beautiful valley. During the 1920s, the lake became the destination for record-setting boat races and Olympic team training. In 1921, the Lakeshore Beach Company began creation of the most ambitious of the resort operations for black patrons at Elsinore. The leaders of this investment group were prominent black Angelenos, physician Wilbur C. Gordon, attorney Charles Darden, who was also involved in developing property in Santa Monica for a resort, businesswoman Sally T. Richardson, and businessman Arthur L. Reese, who was a pioneering African American in the city, or it was a city then, but in the district of Venice, California. And so he worked in another area of resort activities. They hired the young Paul R. Williams to design plans for the Lakeshore Beach Club, which included landscaping, dining, and dancing facilities, a bathhouse, cottages, a small hotel, and other buildings. This was early in Williams's career. By the late 1920s, he became one of the most prominent African American architects in the country. And since his death in 1980, Williams has become one of the most renowned U.S. architects of the 20th century. He became especially known for his designs of refined luxury homes for several Hollywood film industry types and other wealthy patrons and commercial buildings in mostly the Los Angeles area. Williams' resort plan was never fully implemented due to the Lakeshore Beach Company's inability to raise the sufficient funds for its execution. Nonetheless, even without the grand club plan's realization, the Lakeshore Beach Company and other black entrepreneurial ventures continued at Lake Elsinore, providing visitor accommodations for several decades into the 20th century. So I just want to say here that you are one of the few audiences that has had the opportunity to hear me do a talk and see these drawings of the Paul Williams kind of site plan, because they just have been realized in the donation of the Paul Williams papers to the Getty Research Center. I had asked Karen Hudson, his granddaughter, about these drawings for years. I can't find them. She had, lots of paper, and she had, tubes of stuff, and this was really not one of her priorities in terms of the things that she did. But when I was a Getty Fellow, I asked them, they hadn't even started doing the cataloging yet and the finding aid, but while I was there, I said, well, look, this is what I'm looking for. And they found the drawings for the Lake Elsinore, and then they found some of the other buildings of people who I talk about in my research that Williams was commissioned to do designs for as well. So that was just like, wow, there's so much rich material that is around, and sometimes as historians we just have to wait. So anyway, Williams became, as I said, he became especially known for his designs. And so then, in terms of Lake Elsinore, the vagaries of the lake conditions and changing leisure tastes and race relation dynamics over the years impacted African American entrepreneurs, resort business opportunities, and success. The black community's presence has been left out of the local history narratives and landmark designation programming to obscure our understanding of the full shared collective history of the range of community builders and their impact and contributions to the development of Lake Elsinore and the Southern California region. Another Riverside black-owned resort, the Park Ridge Country Club, opened in Corona in 1927. It had been a private elite club and leisure space development originally built for a white-only clientele until a group of very ambitious African-American businessmen, physician Eugene Curry Nelson, Journey White, and Charles R. Bailey purchased the property to operate as an interracial recreation space and an attempt at black community suburbanization and elite recreation. The 663-acre site featured a clubhouse, a champion golf course, rifle shooting range, a swimming pool, tennis courts, cricket grounds, estate lots were for sale, and there was a landing field and a hangar for airplanes. By the 1920s era, with prosperity from production of lemons and its byproducts, Corona citizens had established a civic and commercial center with a variety of buildings, business types, civic organizations, and institutions. Even though the extensive booster-style newspaper coverage and rave reviews portrayed the Park Ridge, which originally opened in 1925, as being well received in its efforts of catering to the recreational and leisure needs of the white Southern California elite, after 2 years, the resort's finances were in poor health. For the black entrepreneurs, the white owners' difficulties offered a new kind of favorable circumstances to establish and expand their own opportunities. Ambitious African Americans heard the word they could acquire their version of the good life in Los Angeles and its environs with fewer restraints than in other parts of the U.S., and they moved to obtain it. The Park Ridge was presented in the national black media discourse as a consistent and emblematic, presented in the national black media discourse as a consistent emblematic, as being consistent and emblematic of the attainment of the community, and heralded for its assertive enterprise in the face of opposition, and for its vision of modern African American leisure and business ownership. The local elite of white racist citizens strongly contested the African American reconstruction of this venture in the Corona community. The black businessmen's efforts to make the venture a success have been left out of the local history narrative and public memory, thereby limiting our understanding of the Corona community's historical actors and evolution. The omission of this history of Corona, like Lake Elsinore, erases the complicated layers of social dynamics of race, space, power, and capitalism in California, which these distinctive stories illuminate. Another place developed in this era for African American patronage was Eureka Villa, later known as Valverde, in the Santa Clarita Valley area of North Los Angeles County. It was initially an African American planned resort community development project with white partners that began in 1924. An early leader of this project was black Angelino real estate impresario and booster Sidney P. Dones. Public money contributed to the development of a park and swimming pool, and multiple marketing efforts by boosters, both black and white, helped sustain interest of African American consumers' patronage of this hidden canyon area until the crumbling of the racial apartheid era in the 1960s. By 2015, the Valverde community had been recast as one of the last rural areas remaining with affordable housing in the Santa Clarita Valley, with limited public memory of the African American heritage. So in 1912, the Bruce family purchased Pacific Ocean shoreline property to create a resort service business that became informally known as Bruce's Beach. Located in the city of Manhattan Beach, it was a very popular gathering place for African Americans on weekends and in the summertime. This successful venture spurred other African Americans to buy land and build vacation cottages nearby. From the first day of operation, the Los Angeles Times newspaper reported many Manhattan Beach white supremacist residents, including the city founders, undertook private harassment actions and eventually legal sanctions to discourage black people from visiting and settling in the area. By the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan got involved, and they started harassment actions also to push the Bruce family, the Bruce's Beach Resort property owners and day trippers out. A proposal to seize the Manhattan Beach North End neighborhood through eminent domain proceedings to create a park was submitted by private white citizens to the city council and was finally approved in 1924. In the mid-1920s, this area was almost uninhabited, rural, and the most remote Manhattan Beach shoreline section. The Bruce and other black resort community property owners challenged these proceedings. Challenges to these proceedings were unsuccessful. Racial prejudice, aided by abusive use of state power, eliminated the African American residential and economic development of the Bruce's establishment and small resort cottage community, along with destroying black beachgoer social space with attempts to erase the site's memory from history. Only through political assertion has a limited revival of the history of Bruce's Beach and its incorporation into the public record emerged in the early decades of the 21st century. In their first organized civil disobedience protest action in the region, members of the Los Angeles branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in 1927 challenged Manhattan Beach officials when they tried additional measures to make the beach white only. Although the Bruce's Beach community was destroyed when the NAACP members staged a swim-in protest for which they were arrested and fined through legal maneuvers, clarification was one that African Americans had the legal right to enjoy this and all California beaches. This was an important civil rights and beach access victory, not just for African Americans, but for all Californians. In the coming decades, with this accomplishment, African Americans' more confident assertion of their legal rights contributed to racial restriction attempts by whites at the state's public beaches fading away. As the 20th century advanced, African Americans around the U.S. would increasingly utilize legal actions and public protests to dismantle legally sanctioned, along with informally enforced discrimination and segregation at public accommodations. The Bruce's Beach landholders and visitors were not alone in facing legal sanctions and private harassment actions discouraging African Americans from visiting and settling in particular beach towns as the region's population increased during the 1920s. There were confrontations and assaults across decades as late as the 1950s, some of which turned violent, aimed to bar African Americans from public beaches and shoreline development opportunities at Huntington Beach in Orange County and other SoCal places. Black citizens would continue to mount legal challenges to these discriminatory practices endeavored by whites, and you can read more about some of these things in my book. Finally constructed in the late 1950s, more than 30 years later, the land taken by eminent domain for the Manhattan Beach Park in 1924 was formally renamed Bruce's Beach. In 1920, it was renamed Bruce's Beach in 2007. Park made in 1950 and renamed Bruce's Beach in 2007 to recognize the African American pioneers who recreated as they attempted to build wealth through real estate investments and community formation. If one has knowledge of the park's site history, the new park name simultaneously acknowledges the white racist sabotage of their black neighbors. This was the first step to making the broader public more aware of the accomplishments of Manhattan Beach's African American pioneers, who, in spite of challenges, took action to develop part of their California and American dreams around leisure culture that would define modern Southern California identity and spread across the nation. Since 2020, new energy has arisen to reclaim the important marginalized California Pacific coastline history of African American places during the Jim Crow era. Bruce's Beach and Santa Monica's Bay Street Beach became recognized by the public in new, visible ways as sites of consciousness, reflection, healing, pilgrimage in the wake of the global movement of racial justice in the United States and beyond after the savage police killing of George Floyd and others. The idea of the Bruce family land being returned to their descendants reemerged at a more heightened sense of urgency during this time period. California's state and Los Angeles County elected officials passed legislation to allow for the return of the beachfront property owned by the Los Angeles County to the descendants of Charles and Willa Bruce, from whom it was wrongfully taken in the 1920s. Los Angeles County bought the land back from the descendants for $20 million. What these public officials have done opens up new ways of thinking about how to redress and recognize the legacy of social injustices done to African Americans that have not been fully explored in the past. This restitution provides for accrued generational wealth that was lost for the Bruces. It provides some psychological healing for the loss of opportunity for the descendants and for the African American community in general. These moves are a good thing, but we must think more deeply about the events of 100 years ago and their legacy. This restitution does not provide tangible collective benefits to the purged African Americans of all classes from Manhattan Beach that lost out on a vibrant socioeconomic cultural space where today they make up less than 1% of the city's 35,000 population. For broader social justice to occur, our elected officials need to implement innovative public programs which encourage African American cultural, social, economic attainment opportunities in Manhattan Beach and at other beaches and sites. The renamed Bruce's Beach Park, the renamed park, Bruce's Beach, they've renamed it again. It's now Bruce's Beach Park. Okay? They should have just left that out. Okay, that last part of the name. But anyway, it's created some social benefit in the identified sense of place in the landscape of America and the region that allows for a more culturally inclusive collective identity and social history encompassing a public memory. The park name honors the Bruce's Beach pioneers and Black Angelenos in their ambitions and initiatives that challenge the era's white supremacist ideas, and for their asserted determination to participate in socio-cultural economic amusement and relaxation trends that were considered modern by the 1920s, along with their broader vision of themselves and community. The Santa Monica social justice events were held at a place near where African Americans were able to build a sustained community in this city that was founded in the 1880s. These residents established themselves a few blocks from the Pacific shoreline in the environs of the Bay Street Beach. This is nearby the Civic Center today and Phillips Chapel Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, the city's first African-American owned spiritual and institutional space, and the denomination's first church west of Texas. A short way south, a Venice enclave began forming in the same time period, which was considered part of the Santa Monica African-American community. In my current research activities, I am examining this Black Venice experience in a more in-depth manner than has been done in the past. It is notable that an African American community in Los Angeles' Venice district and the city of Santa Monica have managed to survive waves of discrimination and wealthification for more than a century. In the years surrounding Phillips Chapel's beginnings in 1908 at 4th and Bay Streets, the oceanfront area down the hill around Pico, south a few blocks to Bicknell Avenue, emerged as a gathering place where African Americans from all over Los Angeles and beyond came to enjoy the beach's pleasures. From 1900 to the 1960s, many beachgoers once referred to this area as the Bay Street Beach. White people referring to this area called it the Inkwell, and they were referencing the darker skin color of the beachgoers who went there. And it was a derogatory name that they were using. Some black people took this name and repurposed it as a badge of pride. Others refused to call the place this name at all. Even today, many continue to prefer that this name not be used. Accessible by streetcar near blossoming African American enclave centered around Phillips Chapel and a few black-owned businesses, this was a beach gathering place with La Bonita and a few other guest houses, eating places, tennis courts, volleyball nets, and other recreational opportunities. And it became a place of refuge and community formation. Santa Monica Black enterprises in the 1920s, led by prominent attorney Charles S. Darden, who I mentioned, who was involved in Lake Elsinore as a developer, and businessman Norman O. Houston, who would go on to become a founder of the Golden State Mutual Life Insurance Company and other businesses, were among a few important attempts at beach area business development, sabotaged by white supremacist actions, overlapping the rise of black beach culture and residency to support a deepened community life and African American made place in Southern California beach city environs in the first half of the 20th century. While white supremacist actions hindered African Americans from buying property throughout the urban region and sabotaged their beach service businesses into the 1950s, their community's presence and agency sustained their public space usage at the oceanfront near the Crescent Bay Park and Bay Street in Santa Monica. The city of Santa Monica's 2005 landmark designation of Phillips Chapel Christian Methodist Episcopal Church set the stage in 2008 for the official recognition with a cultural monument of the historical African American beach gathering place at Bay Street and Oceanfront Walk. Also recognized was Nick Gabaldon, the first documented surfer of African American and Mexican American descent in the Santa Monica Bay. He represents African Americans of his era that challenged racial and class structures by confronting the emergent politics of leisure and recreation access when African Americans sought self-fulfillment, surfed, and hung out at the oceanfront, a public space that was then and continues to be a centerpiece of California's identity. The local stories of African Americans' actions to use this and other outdoor places contribute to the national narrative of mass movement to open leisure space to all, demonstrating how the struggle for leisure and public space, along with political and economic issues, reshaped the long freedom rights struggle. So in June 2019, this beach area was listed as the Bay Street Beach Historic District in the National Register of Historic Places for its significance in the African American experience in U.S. history. This is the first historic district in Santa Monica to receive this national honor, and it's a landscape. It's not a building. It's an intangible heritage space, and one of the few in California and the nation associated with a minoritized community. Since 2012, I have led innovative public programming partnerships with regional, nonprofit, and government entities to engage people in learning about more complex, culturally inclusive stories of our collective national history and the African American experience, heritage conservation issues, beach wildlife appreciation and stewardship, and aspirations to environmental justice in policies involving beach access and civic action with Nick Gabaldon Day, International Coastal Cleanup Day, field trips for youngsters from inland areas, and the Belmar History and Art Project. Some of this programming includes introductory surfing lessons as part of the beach recreation experience. As part of the California Coastal Commission's policy mandate for wider environmental justice to help ensure equitable coastal access for marginalized communities and my advocacy, Santa Monica officials were required to develop an education program to teach the public about the erased African American history of early African American the history of the early African American visitors, residents, and business persons who contributed to making Santa Monica a vibrant and unique space and place from the 1900s to 1960 in the beach neighborhoods, in the beach neighborhoods south of the 10 freeway around the Civic Center campus area as a construction permit condition for which for what is now the new historic Belmar Park. A multifaceted education, inspirational, remembrance, and commemorative justice initiative, Belmar History and Art includes a context essay, a permanent outdoor exhibition installation of interpretive text panels, monumental sculpture, K through 12 lesson plans, and other educational programming that will continue to bring this area's history to life for present and future generations. As the nation and the world have been grappling simultaneously with a pandemic and reinvigorated longing for racial equity and black dignity, along with the efforts to strengthen our democratic norms and values after the domestic terrorism at our nation's capital in January 2021, Belmar History and Art is a timely contribution in helping open and inform contemporary life for understanding of those who came before us in Santa Monica's historical African American community life. It helps to build a broader, richer, and more accurate understanding of our shared history and identity in our global, national, regional, and local citizenship. Recognition of a more diverse underrepresented narratives, sites, and the creation of new knowledge that challenge ruling class and white supremacist narratives helps all connect to a more representative history and identity. More inclusive initiatives can be a vehicle for healing and education, along with offering opportunities for offering opportunities for cultural tourism of various community sites. alternative modes of public memorialization rooted in commemorative justice ideals of informative and transformative learning experiences should be asked for by those today demanding more inclusive narratives in the public sphere. These experiences, alongside traditional landmark designations and remembrance spaces erection, will have a more lasting societal structural effect. So this is what we've done in the Belmar History and Arts multifaceted education, inspirational, and remembrance programming that tells a more complex American story to enliven the past in resonant ways for more diverse present and future generations. So in closing, like many white Americans, Black Americans were lured to California for its opportunities and good life imagery produced by writers and painters and photographers and movie makers, which were used by various boosters promoting migration to the state. The stories and imagery of African Americans who participated in various phases of the Western migration and settlement continue to remain largely absent from the dominant mythologies and histories surrounding the Western migration, notwithstanding investigations of the Black West published during the last 50 years. Today, I have highlighted little-known stories about African American leadership and modern socioeconomic development, socioeconomic investments in the California Dream, and a few places where, and a few ways this history has been reclaimed and amplified today. So I hope that you'll take time to learn a little bit more about these forgotten Black Western pioneers and their undertakings, and ponder the implications of their stories for our lives today, in for some of you in your own work, and then for the future as well, by reading my book, Living the California Dream, African American Leisure Sites During the Jim Crow Era, and learning more about the programming that I have described to you today. And thank you very much